As I was beginning this video, Tom Brady officially announced his retirement. While it was expected, it is now official, and due in some part, though not because of only him, the NFL will look very, very different next year. For a lot of NFL fans under the age of 30, myself included in this, we don't know an NFL without Tom, so him retiring, plus a lot of other moves that are bound to happen that will shake up the NFL in a way we have not seen in some time. We're going to break everything down and really discuss the entire NFL in today's video, so without further ado, let's begin. Entering 2022, we're going to have either Joe Burrow or Matt Stafford win a Super Bowl ring, despite each having 0 career playoff wins before the year and Joe having never been to a playoff game. The expectations for Burrow, especially if Cincy wins the Super Bowl, are going to be absurdly high, because of going from a national championship win on an all-time historic team, to the #1 pick, to the road to recovery when he tore his ACL against the Washington football team, to a hopeful Super Bowl win, all within 3 years. This is a path even Patrick Mahomes, who so many people, and honestly myself included at times, drew him to be the next man up in terms of the best quarterback for the next decade and to be the true face of the NFL. He, along with Joe Burrow and of course Josh Allen, are going to be insanely fun to watch. You'd assume at this point in time all 3 of those guys will eventually get a ring, but you would have thought the same thing with the 2004 class of Phil Rivers, Big Ben, and Eli Manning. Who knows how these 3 will play out over the next decade, and then of course you can't rule out other teams like the Justin Herbert-led Chargers or the Lamar Jackson-led Ravens, and at this point, who knows with Denver? Denver has a team that's a quarterback away from seriously competing, and when you're in that division with Mahomes and Herbert and even Derek Carr, who will now be coached by Josh McDaniels, you're naturally not going to win the division competing with those thoroughbreds with Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. There's a very strong possibility they trade for a veteran quarterback to be able to compete with those guys, and of course everyone assumes Aaron Rodgers, but it is worth noting George Patton, the Broncos GM, used to work for the Minnesota Vikings, and there is also a possibility Kirk gets traded this offseason there as well. And even a surprise one, though this is admittedly a distant third after Rodgers and Cousins, would be Matt Ryan of the Falcons. It would make sense for the Falcons to trade him because they could still get something decent for Ryan while giving second-year head coach Arthur Smith and GM Terry Fontenot their quarterback of the future. Now, I don't think Matt Ryan will get traded to Denver specifically, though I could see him going to Pittsburgh, and it is worth mentioning because Ryan is not the long-term starter for the Falcons, given he will be 37 at the start of the 2022 season. Ryan would be the perfect stopgap quarterback for a team like Pittsburgh, who can realistically compete with the offense they have, given they have, and he's now a Pro Bowl running back in Najee Harris, and receivers in Deontay Johnson, who's also a Pro Bowler, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, and the potential return of Juju Smith-Schuster as well. It makes too much sense for the Falcons to move Matt Ryan this offseason, and I truly do think he will be. For anyone thinking it, I will address this for both Ryan and Cousins. Both the Falcons and Vikings would eat some of the quarterback's cap space if they are to be traded. Not all to be 100% clear, but they would definitely eat some of the large cap space to entice another team like the Broncos, Steelers, or now, and Matt Ryan obviously wouldn't get traded here, but now maybe even the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are still very much in a win-now mode. So not only do we have Tom Brady now out of the NFL, Sean Payton out of the NFL, and this video is on 2022 specifically, so he may return. You get where I'm going with this. And Aaron Rodgers potentially on the move, but within this, both the NFC North and NFC South are not going to be good in 2022. The Panthers are an entire mess, and start years hot, then catastrophically collapse. The Falcons beat only the teams they were supposed to in 2021, as they beat a grand total of 0 playoff teams. The Bucs are Tom Brady-less, and unless this is addressed with a prior quarterback mentioned, will take a step back, as at 44 years old, Tom Brady threw for 5,300 yards and 43 touchdowns and nearly led a 24-point comeback against a team that is headed to the Super Bowl. Surely no one they can bring in will top that, and Kyle Trask and Blaine Gabbert especially certainly won't. And the Saints are a team you have to be careful with, but I don't think they're a serious NFC contender, but that's just me. For the NFC North, you're more than likely going to have Jared Goff lead the Lions in 2022, which kind of says enough in itself, though credit to Goff because of how he finished the 2021 season. The Bears' offense is absolutely atrocious, and their defense is aging, so there's a lot going on there, and the Vikings are going to have to either extend Kirk Cousins another year to relieve some of the 2022 cap for him, or ask several key veterans like Adam Thielen, Harrison Smith, and Eric Kendricks to take a pay cut. Green Bay is currently way over the cap and have several big free agents like Davante Adams, Robert Tonyan, who he specifically probably won't be back because he will have a one true time to set his family up for generations of wealth, and staying loyal to Green Bay more than likely based on their cap situation will not do that. Both Allen Lazard and MVS are free agents, along with Rasul Douglas, who had a hell of a second half of the season as well. So here's a team that went for broke for another Super Bowl, and unfortunately, like 30 other NFL teams, because only one NFL team can win, came out broke. And there's the NFC West with the Seattle Seahawks, who will get a video on them specifically in their own rights. Seahawks fans, I see the requests for the rebuild video, and it's coming, I promise. But there's been a lot of smoke with Russell Wilson, like, oh, he's testing the waters and seeing who's interested, or whatever headlines there are that come out of his camp. The Seahawks are in a very, very bad situation right now as a franchise, as they have not hit on a first-round pick in a long time, like since 2010 with Russell Okung and Earl Thomas, and have had to routinely get production out of players like late-round picks like Tyler Lockett and Chris Carson. And by the way, there's not anything wrong with that, but you need to hit on your first-round picks. You need to hit on more than one in a decade. So the Seahawks honestly could be about as close to as rock bottom gets in 2022 if they move on from Russ. And even with Russ, their future does not look all that bright right now because of their lack of draft picks, because of the trade for safety Jamal Adams, or commonly referred to on Twitter as Blitz Boy. The Seahawks went from back-to-back Super Bowl appearances to a soon-to-be cellar dweller, largely because of how bad their drafting has been, and making selections like Rashad Penny over Nick Chubb and like Jordan Brooks over Patrick Queen. I could spend a whole video on the Seahawks and their dysfunction from a front office standpoint, or more so from a player personnel standpoint, but we'll leave it with this. This franchise has missed on so many picks over the years, and obviously every other franchise has. I'm not just attacking the Seahawks. But at this point, I feel you're better off selling the assets you have in Russ and DK, because you're not going to win the division unless everyone gets hurt, and especially in that insanely competitive NFC West. The NFL is a business, and due in large part to this, I do expect Russell Wilson to be moved this offseason. With no Tom next year, and of course no Big Ben, you're looking at a lot of familiar faces in new places. With Tom gone, I think Chris Godwin is too, and his free agency will be one to watch because he is a very productive player, but is unfortunately coming off of an ACL tear. Also, I realize I'm nearly 8.5 minutes into a video discussing, the NFL is going to look new next year, or a lot different. I also am under the belief Rob Gronkowski retires with Tom retiring. Davante Adams you'd also think is gone, and while this quarterback class isn't 2020 or 2021, remember we have been spoiled with great quarterback classes over the past few years, I do think at least one rookie will be a Week 1 starter next year in Kenny Pickett, and there's no ruling out someone like Matt Corral, Malik Willis, or Carson Strong either, depending on directions franchises like the Seattle Seahawks, Atlanta Falcons, or New Orleans Saints choose to go. They could completely start over and have a rookie playing for them almost immediately. Of course, you have the same young gun quarterbacks like the Allens, Mahomes, Burrows, but the teams that have competed for the past 10 years, and in some case longer, will be very different next year, and you see that with the new wave of coaches like the Brandon Staleys of the world. We are entering a new era of the NFL like we did nearly 20 years ago with the Tom Brady's, Peyton Manning's, Drew Brees, and eventually, of course, that 2004 draft class. We are now entering a new school NFL, and there's going to be a lot of significant change this offseason, and potentially more so than we've seen in any of the past 10 years. I really can't wait, and I can't wait to discuss with you guys in the future with how everything plays out. And with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. But before we finish, I will be rebooting the second channel. It is Football Discussion. I will be making a community post about it. So if you guys do enjoy the content, please like the video and subscribe. It truly would mean the world. And the Football Discussion channel I may turn it into what my first and last name actually is, and kind of just be an everything channel, because I'd eventually like to make it like a daily gambling talk where, we just discuss, what picks are for whether with the pending MLB season and everything in that vicinity. But anyways, that's kind of the announcement for today. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.